The purpose of this video is to introduce you to the user interface, or what's technically termed UI, user interface. That's the program, the actual elements within that program that you're going to use. When you first boot up Adobe Premiere Pro, the first screen that's going to come up is going to be this screen here. Now, as you can see, I've made this quite big. It's not necessarily going to be as big as this when you boot it up. However, it's going to be the same in terms of new project button, open project button, ignore this one here, and then you've got home learn, where you can look at other videos to learn about the program, and sync settings, which you don't need to worry about at the moment. As you can see from my screen, I have a number of projects which I've worked on over the last year. You won't get this, obviously. What you will get is something that's just blank and giving you the opportunity for a new project. We'll click on that button now, and then the program, there we go, will come onto this screen. Now, this has a number of elements that you need to take a great deal of notice of. The first thing is we're going to have this name. You need to give your project a name. I'm just going to call this Prem Pro Demo. Now, I've completed this in one word. It's entirely up to you how you actually do that. The next one is where we're going to save this project, location. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at this location, and I'm going to look at the desktop where I've got your folder, year 12 and 13. I'm going to use my folder. Remember, we did this in the last video where we created all the actual folders for saving areas, Video Tuts, Premiere Pro, and then I'm selecting that folder, and then I'm ready now to save it. The next part of this, you will see General tab, Mercury Playback Engine, CUDA. This is what actually helps to facilitate the actual using of Premiere Pro. You don't need to worry about this. It's quite likely to pick this up as it opens up. Most of these are default, and as default, you don't need to change them. You may find capture format might be DV. Just make sure it's on HDV, higher digital video. Don't need to display the project item name and label color, for instances. Don't worry about that. The next tab, scratch disks. Don't worry about this. It automatically picks up your machine that you're using, and you don't need to worry about it. Ingest settings. Now, this is very important because this is going to help facilitate your user experience in editing, the fluency of your editing, the flow of your editing, and the ease of your editing. So the first thing you need to do is you need to check the ingest box. The next thing you need to do is click on this element here, and as you can see when I zoom in, it gives you 4 different options. You need to create proxies. Now, what is ingest settings? Ingest settings is all about how Premiere Pro reads your video clips. Now, if you're shooting in higher definition and your machine is not a strong machine, it's not powerful, then even editing a high definition 1080 high definition video clip is going to cause some, shall we say, lagging in your machine. It's going to be slow, jerky movements, and you don't want that while you're editing. Excuse me. So what you need to do is you need to create a proxy. In other words, Premiere Pro will create these proxies at a smaller setting than the video settings you used. So for example, on this one, if we go to the presets, which you need to do, we got a number of presets. Some of them are quite involved. The main one and the easiest one here is this one, which is 1280 by 720. So what that will do is that will add a proxy. In other words, a video clip that you can use for editing, but will not affect the original clip settings. So in setting that up, you'll be able to edit in 1280 by 720, which is a smaller file size. And in having a smaller file size like that, your editing and the flow of your editing will be a lot easier and a lot better, and it will avoid all that lagging when you come to play back your video clips. Now, this doesn't mean that you're going to end up with a poor quality video. And when we get into the main area of Premiere Pro, you will see this when I explain it to you further. Proxy destination, same as project. Leave it at that. It's as simple as that. Now we're ready. If you want to have a look at the summary, it's down here. Click OK. OK, when you've opened Premiere Pro and you've gone through the initial stages of getting into the user interface, this is what you're going to be met with here. You can click on any of these tabs, any of these palettes. You'll see a blue line that surrounds these palettes. This tells you that you are within that palette. Doesn't matter what palette you go to, there'll always be a blue line when you click on it. So let's have a look at this user interface. First thing is, at the top here, we've got the drop down menus, which are the same with any program on a computer, and most of them are self-explanatory editing. You'll notice a lot of them are grayed out at the moment simply because we're not actually in the process of editing. Then we'll go to this top menu here, which has color, effects, audio, assembly, editing, graphics, libraries, meta logging, and learning. Learning is basically where you can actually learn about anything, and as you can see, I've just clicked on it and it turns this screen into a different layout. Color is all about, and you can't see it at the moment, but I've got my palette. Let's bring it over. There we are. When you click on color, you get a new palette come up, which actually gives you options for color when you actually have a click in your timeline. Effects, again, let's bring that over to there. There we are. We've got a lot of effects here. We can have expand any of these graphic effects. These are all available to you. Audio is when you want to edit your audio, which is done after you've completed the visuals. There is a sort of a process about that, which I'll explain when it comes to editing. Assemble editing is a very simple way of editing. You have your project bin here and you timeline here and the screen here that you can see, and you can actually, it's a very simple, quick way of editing. Personally, I don't ever use it. I don't see any point in using it. Editing, of course, this is the actual one that you're going to be using. If you want to edit graphics or do graphics, immediately this happens, the whole screen changes and you get this palette come up, the essential graphics. There are lots of online graphics which you can use that are free. Some are Premiere graphics which are paid for, but there's still a lot of good graphics you can use, lower thirds, etc. Libraries is all about libraries. You can see lots of my images that I have here in my library, depending on what actual library I've chosen. As you can see here, I've got lots and lots of various libraries here. And libraries is actually what it's all about in terms of, we can have, let's have a look, my library. Organized libraries, this is the one you would probably come up with because you haven't sorted any libraries out. Meta login is all about going onto a specific clip and all the details of that clip will be here. And of course, we've already done learning. So let's go back to the editing platform or the editing tab. Okay, so here we are now back in the editing platform here. So let's go through some of these slowly. We've gone through the top menus there. We're back in editing, which is what you're going to use. First palette here is source. There are no clips, of course, at the moment. It's the source, in other words, where the clips are coming from. And this is actually a monitor which shows you what's on that clip. Effects controls, again, no clip, but it gives you the effects that you have on that particular clip. Audio mixer, I think most of you probably know what an audio mixer is. And metadata, well, of course, again, it tells you what that clip is all about. The next one is program. So in editing, whenever anybody is edited throughout time immemorial, and that goes way back to the 20s and 30s, people have had two monitors. The left monitor has always been the source monitor, where the clip is coming from. The right monitor has always been the program monitor. This is the going out monitor, the monitor that your audience would see. And it's always been the same, left and right. This also needs to be set up in terms of your proxies, which we'll go into a bit later. The next palette down here, first of all, you have your project, which we call Premiere Pro Demo. Import media, this is where you import all your media, which is video clips, it can be photographs, graphics, anything. It goes into this bin here, if you like to put it that way. Media browser, you can use this to import. Personally, I don't use it. I find it a lot easier when we go into the next video. I'll explain to you, but I find it a lot easier just to drag and drop, to be honest. Libraries, well, of course, again, this is where you can actually create, or shall we say, download titles and things like that. Info, no info at the moment. It's basically on your project. And of course, this is the effects panel. We can have presets here. Some of these presets are my own presets. You've got Lumetri presets. This is the coloring, where you color grade your film. You've got audio effects, audio transitions. This is where you go from one audio clip to another. Video effects, there are lots. Don't get carried away with these video effects. Sometimes it can ruin your film if you start putting in these glorious page curl type transitions, effects and things like this. It's horrible. Transitions, again, like audio, from one clip to another. The most common is the dissolve. As you can see here, it's already got a blue circle square around it, which basically means it's default. Cross dissolve. And CG presets, well, you don't need to worry about these because these are my own personal presets that I use. So we go on now. This one here is the toolbox, which is selection tool and then track selection, forward tool, and it goes on. This is a razor tool which you can use for cutting up your video. Slip tool, I'll explain these. Pen tool, hand tool and type tool, which is obviously where you do titles. The main tools you use is going to be this selection tool. I will go through some of them in the basics later. Then we go on to the timeline. The timeline is where you assemble all your video clips in the order that you want them. So remember the fact that you've actually created a rushes log. Now this rushes log is obviously all the clips that you've shot, regardless of whether they're good, bad, usable, non-usable, etc. Then you've created from that rushes log an EDL, or an edit decision list. This is your film on paper. And it's all the clips that you want to use, and they're transferred from the rushes log and they're placed in the order you're going to use them on your EDL. Now, your EDL then allows you to see exactly what clips you want to put in this area here and in the order that you want to put them. You can then play them back and see them in this monitor here. It's as simple as that. All editing software, generally, they will have at least a program or a monitor, one monitor that shows you what you've got. They will have a project bin and they will have a timeline. It doesn't matter what software you use for editing, film editing, it will have these very familiar basics. Finally, on this one over here, you've got the audio monitor, which allows you to see the audio levels, something that we'll go into a bit later.